What's going on, guys? Briar Rabbit here. Today I want to do something a little bit different. A lot of people have noticed that I've got a lot of new equipment in my office lately for streaming, for content creation, and today I want to go through some of that stuff. So I've got a new PC that was provided by On Air PC. This is a PC that was provided to me strictly for streaming. It was a custom-built PC that we really configured just for streaming. So it runs OBS, it runs Spotify, it runs a browser, and that's what I wanted to do. I want it to be powerful so it can crunch all this video and send it out to Twitch, or to run Premiere Pro and actually create videos on. But this thing has been specified as a streaming PC, and that's how it was built. When I talked to Ryan over On Air PC, we kind of went over what I was going to use it for. We decided that AMD was the better platform for me because you can get a cheaper processor with more raw processing performance over on the AMD side. We put in an AMD R6 or R7 1600 into this. It's a 6-core, 12-threaded processor. That's been really nice. It's been very stable, and it just does a fantastic job of running a stream with very little problem. My previous PC that I bought for streaming was a pre-built PC, and it had a 6700K, an Intel i7 6700K, which was a good processor, but there's definitely a difference moving over to the AMD. And one of the things I'd like to do today is show you exactly what I use settings-wise for streaming, and why I use those, and how I've arrived at those settings. So that's what we're going to do today. Actually show you guys how I do it. So the first thing we're going to do is go into the settings of OBS. Now, the latest version of OBS is OBS 2.0.0.1. And first thing you ought to know is when you download OBS, always run the 64-bit version of OBS. If you accidentally start running the 32-bit version, you'll run into a lot of problems that you just don't need to worry about. Just run the 64-bit version and don't worry about it. Once you go into the settings, the first thing you're going to want to do is get your stream key. To get your stream key, you simply go to your Twitch page, hit the settings buttons here, and then click on set stream key, and that will show you your stream key. You just put it in here. Obviously, I don't want to show that on stream. That is something that should not be shared publicly. It is the actual, it's basically like a password that you use with Twitch to say, this is the channel I want to stream on, and if somebody were able to get a hold of that stream key, they could stream to your channel, so you don't want that to happen. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the output tab. This is a very important tab because this is actually controlling the output of your stream. Now, for me, with OBS, I use a couple of different inputs. I use an Elgato HD60, I have an Avio 4K, so my PlayStation 4 Pro actually can output 4K video, and I grabbed that using this Avio 4K capture card, and that's actually what you're seeing here, is the 4K video being down sampled to 1080p, and then output to Twitch in a 1080p format. The reason I do that is I think it just looks a little bit sharper, it looks a little bit crisper, and I just really like the look of it. Now, depending on what my input is, I might switch over to the HD60, which does 1080p 60 frames per second. The Avio 4K only does 30 frames per second. So, for instance, if I'm going to be streaming Destiny 2 on PC, I'd have a secondary PC hooked up to the Elgato HD60 and run it at 60 frames per second as opposed to 30 frames per second in 4K because higher frame rates just look better. So we'll be switching over there. Once we go into the settings here, we want to set our output to be compatible with Twitch. So we're going to go to the output here, and one of the first things you're going to want to do is switch this output mode from simple to advanced. And this is going to give you a bunch of options down below. First of all, your encoder, you want this to be set to X264. If you're going to be using a video card to render your video and output it to Twitch, you're going to get lower quality, and that's just the fact of the matter. So you really want to be using the X264 codec, which runs on your processor. And the thing is the better the processor you have, the better your output can look. So this is one of those things where you just throw money at a Twitch stream and it gets better and better looking. That's just a fact of the matter. If you have a, a i5 processor, you're not going to be able to get it to look as good as an i7 processor or a 8-core processor, right? So right now on this PC, I'm using a 6-core, 12-threaded processor, and these are kind of the settings that I've come to, and we'll go over how I came to those settings a little bit later. Now, for rate control down here, you're going to want to always select CBR. This is a Twitch thing. Twitch doesn't like variable bit rates. They like a constant bit rate, and that's what CBR stands for, is constant bit rate. So always select, if you're streaming to Twitch, constant bit rate. Next up, our bit rate itself. Now, I've chosen 6,000. If you are a partnered streamer, they upped the maximum bit rate that you can stream at to 6,000 this summer. If you are not a partnered streamer, then you want to be careful with this number. You may have the internet bandwidth to stream at a very high bit rate, but there's a problem in that you may not have access to quality options. Quality options let a viewer view a stream that is a high bit rate, but if they're on a mobile phone or if they have bad Wi-Fi or a slow internet connection, they can go into the quality options on their browser or on their Twitch stream viewer and select a lower quality to actually view at. And then Twitch basically is outputting multiple streams. They have a source stream, which is actually, for me, it'd be 6,000 bit rate. Or they could select, let's say, well, my internet isn't that good, so I'm going to select a 480p, 1,000 bitrate version. So quality options lets me stream at a high bitrate and still let everybody view it no matter how their internet connection is. But if you're not partnered, you may not have access to quality options. So I'd recommend like a 1,500 or 2,000 bitrate, and then see what your viewers say about it, see if they're getting a smooth experience. Keyframe interval, not much to say about this. Set it to 2, forget about it. CPU usage. Now, this is an interesting one. You're going to see a lot of options here, ranging from ultra fast to placebo. Basically, the slower you go down this list, the better your stream will look, but the harder it's going to impact on your CPU. So for me, for this computer, I've selected very fast, and that's run pretty well for me. Soon, we're going to be upgrading to a Ryzen 7 1800X in this same process, or in this same computer, and it'll be interesting to do some testing to see if we can move this up to faster or even fast. Now, you start getting results that just don't mean a whole lot once you start going past fast. If you start hitting medium or slow, you are using more processing, but you're not necessarily seeing those results on stream. So if you can get your computer to go faster or fast, you're pretty much hitting the max of how good a stream can look. Sure, there are small differences as you go down the list here, but you're really getting minimal returns for investment. So for the Ryzen R7 1700 or R5 1600, maybe it's an R5 1600, my bad. Very fast is what I've kind of selected, and one of the reasons for that is that I don't want any frame skipping. I don't want any overheating. I just want the R5 to be running stable and to never have an issue. I just want it to, I might stream for 6 to 8 hours one day, and this thing has to just be chugging for all that time. So one of the things that I've noticed with the R5 processor is that I can overclock it and it will be stable, but will it be stable for 2 hours? Will it be stable for 6 hours? And that's one of the tricky things about overclocking for a stream. For a computer that's running video games, it's not necessarily just hammering the CPU. I'm able to overclock this processor pretty easily to 3.8 gigahertz, gigahertz. But when I'm actually streaming, I run into problems with overclock, so I pretty much just leave it at stock speeds. For profile, leave that at main. For tune, leave that at none. Next up, we're going to go to the audio tab and basically just set this to 48 kilohertz or whatever your inputs are sampling at. For the most part, that's going to be 48 kilohertz. Set that to stereo, and you're pretty much good to go there. Video. All right, so this is where it gets a little different for me than it might be for you. For most of you, you're just going to want to select this at 1920 by 1080p. But because I am inputting a 4K signal, I do have mine set to a 4K input. It's not a raw 4K, it's the TV standard of 4K, 3840 by 2160. But for me, my base canvas resolution is 4K. And then my output scaled resolution is 1920. So what this is doing is actually taking my 3840 by 2160 input and outputting to Twitch at 1920 by 1060. And then this downscale filter is actually the filter that OBS is using to perform that function. So you want to set this as high as you can if you are performing this function. If this is going 1920 to 1920, then the Lanczos filter isn't going to mean as much. And I also output at 60 frames per second. Why do I do that when my input is 30 frames per second? That's because Twitch streams just look smoother at 60 frames per second, even if you're running a 30 frames per second game. Because if you drop a frame, that frame is a duplicate to the one before it, or it may be a duplicate to the one after it. So the occasional drop frames just look smoother at 60 frames per second than they do at 30 frames per second. Obviously, if your internet connection won't allow you to run at 60 frames per second, don't worry about it. Also, 1920 by 1080p, you don't have to run your output at 1920 by 1080p. If you perhaps are running at a lower bit rate over here, maybe you're running at 2500 or 3000 instead of 6000, you definitely don't want to run at 1920 by 1080p. I'd run that at 720, and I think you'd have a much more success. And if you can run 720 at 60 frames per second, but you can only run 1920 at 30, I would definitely choose 720 at 60. It's going to make for a better viewing experience. Hotkeys is going to be personal to you. You just set up hotkeys to do specific functions inside of OBS. And then the Advanced tab. So we got a couple of things in Advanced that are pretty important. First of all, priority. This is the priority that OBS has on your computer, and you want it to be high. You want OBS, like if all of a sudden some other program like Chrome or Internet Explorer wants to do something, you do not want it dropping frames. So you set the priority of the process in OBS to high. That is super important. Next up, the renderer doesn't matter too much. It's Direct 3D 11. Just choose that one. Color format, though, I find to be interesting. I like to run RGB. And on my Intel 6700K, I could, but I had to lower my output quality settings, okay? So I actually had to lower this to a faster option to run RGB. But I thought that it made the stream look better. The colors are more realistic to actually what I'm seeing on screen when I'm playing, and there was less crunching of the light in the dark. So a lot of times when I'm running NV12 for my color space, details get lost in the dark. The dark has less gray to it. There's less graduation to maybe something that's black and something that's dark gray. You couldn't really tell what that dark gray thing was. However, for some reason with the Ryzen R5 processor, I found that it just doesn't handle this RGB setting as well, so I've really settled on NV12 for the for this processor. For color space range, 601 or 709, I find that to my eye 601 looks better. I think it's got to match up with your source. So for the PlayStation, I believe the source is YUV color space 601. And then for the color range, I like to choose full. Again, if you're bandwidth limited, you may want to go partial there. Or if your source is displaying partial color range, you're probably going to want to change that to partial as well. My audio monitoring device is just the output of my computer. So what I actually listen to my computer on. For recording, this is how the file name is formatted and stuff like that. You can also set a stream delay here. I don't do a stream delay because I'd like to be able to read chat, respond to chat, and have that be pretty quick. Automatic reconnect if you are bumped off of Twitch for whatever reason. This will attempt to just get you back on, and theoretically you wouldn't have to do anything there. So that's it. Those are my settings for OBS. But how did I get to these settings? Well, the way I do it, and we're going to just cancel out of here, is I actually run a test stream. So with my ThumperBot account, which it's just a random account that I made just for testing so that I don't notify my followers or my subscribers when I'm just testing for 15 seconds or 30 seconds at a time. I just stream to this. So I've gone ahead and put this stream key for this account into OBS. And when I hit start streaming here, this is going to start streaming to this ThumperBot account. And we'll give it a second to start streaming. And we're going to mute that stream as well. And once it actually catches up here, of course, we're going to watch an advertisement. Nice. We're going to skip that advertisement. We don't need to give them free advertising on our video. We just don't need that. We don't need that in our lives. So once that advertisement is over for that magical body spray, basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be looking at a few things. I'm going to be looking at the stream output on Twitch. I want to make sure that looks nice and smooth and beautiful. And then I'm also going to be looking at my CPU usage here. I don't want to see that go over about 70%. Once it starts ramping into the 80s, 90s, if another process starts running, all of a sudden you can be bumping it at 100% and you start dropping frames. You can see the drop frame counter over there. So what do I do here to actually test it out? Well, for Destiny, I just load into the tower and I start spinning around like crazy. And what that allows me to do is pretty much maximize what the CPU usage is going to be for Destiny. So you can see I'm running about 31, 32 CPU percentages, which is not bad. And over here, it looks pretty smooth. You're pretty much seeing the same thing you're seeing on both screens. So that's not bad. So let's do an experiment. Let's stop streaming here. And we're going to change our settings. And we're going to go to our output, and we're going to select the faster preset. So what that faster preset is going to do is actually use, there goes that ad again. Jesus, X. I was looking for that free advertising. We're going to go to that faster preset. We're going to apply that change. And what that's going to do is use more CPU to actually start the render. So let's do it, or to render the video out to Twitch. So again, in this case, we're using a 4K capture, and then we're outputting to 1080p. So we've started the stream again. I forgot to change the title of the screen, but we'll just let that be for now. And again, I'm going to start spinning. And what we're seeing now is my CPU utilization is up around 80%. It's at 79.2. And if you look at the actual processor in Task Manager, you're actually seeing 100% utilization. And that's because there's other things that are running on this computer. Perhaps Spotify, perhaps the Opera browser that I'm using to monitor my stream. There's a bunch of stuff running. I got Discord running. I got all sorts of stuff running, not just what I'm actually seeing here. So just by bumping it up to the faster preset, even though OBS is only using 76% of my CPU utilization is up at 100%, and that's not great. What that's going to do is start giving me drop frames. It's also going to, for me, what I've seen is it starts introducing anomalies to my stream. So like if I turn on my webcam, for instance, hello? When I start hitting 100% utilization, what I'll start seeing is some desyncing between maybe my audio and my video. I'll start just running into problems with the stream, drop frames, problems that I don't necessarily see in my window here, but if I were to be watching the stream over here, I would definitely start to see. So let's turn off the webcam here, and we're going to stop the stream, and hopefully we don't get another Axe ad playing over here. And we're going to go on this processor right back down to the very fast preset. We apply that, and we'll start streaming again. Man, these axe ads, though, every time, it's craziness. And then what we're doing here is, once again, we're just going to spin this around. What that spinning this thing around does is it's forcing OBS to actually render, you know, somewhat speedily. If you were to just try and render a still image, like just staring at the Traveler here, you can see my CPU utilization will actually drop right here. Or you can see it right here, CPU 20.4%, 21%. But once I actually start spinning around, it's a little harder for OBS to actually render that because you're rendering different colors, light, dark. It's got to actually, the movement is more challenging for OBS to render. So you see my CPU usage goes up to 33.3% right now. And that is why I'll sit here and I'll just spin it. If I'm doing a long test, like I really want to check out my settings for an hour, 2 hours, I'll just rubber band my controller and have it sit there spinning and spinning and spinning. I'll walk away from the PC, maybe start watching the stream on my iPhone while I'm doing other things just to make sure everything's going well, and do a longer term test once I feel like I've really dialed in my settings. And you can see, I'll go over to Twitch again here. And by watching the Twitch stream, I can actually see what the viewer experience would be like. I might start playing some music, so like I can hear if there's any audio skipping and that kind of thing. I don't actually have to be sitting here for a longer test stream. And I highly recommend doing longer test streams. Do a couple of hours at a time and see if you start having any desync issues or USB issues or whatever software or hardware issues you may run into that crop up over 2 hours that you don't necessarily see after, you know, 15 minutes of a test stream. So that is basically where I've settled. Now, again, I do really like, let me stop the stream again here. And if we go back to the settings here, I do really like how the video looks when you go to RGB, which is in advanced here. There we go. Again, you get I feel like you get just a fuller spectrum of the colors. The colors aren't as processed looking. They're more accurate to what you're seeing when you're playing the game and to what you're seeing on Twitch. But especially I found on these Ryzen processors, it even warns you on here, color formats other than NV12 are intended for recording and are not recommended when streaming. Streaming may incur increased CPU usage due to color format conversion. And you definitely see that. So I'll hit apply here, and when we start streaming, everything basically goes to shit, which was weird because on the Intel side, I just didn't run into that issue. It was a much smoother experience. But you'll see my CPU usage has jumped up tremendously. Actually, it's not doing too bad right here, which makes me wonder if maybe something has been updated since I tested this last, because it does, you know, though, as soon as you look at the actual stream output, though, again, you're seeing it's very choppy, and it doesn't look good at all. So on the NV12, the stream was nice and smooth, just like the output or the window on OBS. But inside of Twitch, it's very choppy indeed. That would not be a good viewer experience. So we'll stop streaming that. I wish I had titled that better. And we're going to move that back to NV12. Hit apply. Start streaming. Now we got a Bud Light ad. Unbelievable. So many ads. Probably should have logged in with my other account to actually view the stream, but whatever. And we'll start spinning around. And this is what I'll do. This is how I test out what works on each PC, because each PC is going to be a little bit different, depending on if you have an i5 processor, an i7 processor, an R5, an R7. your settings are actually going to be different. One of the things I'm hoping for when we do input the R7 1800X is that we can actually stream at higher quality, and I'd like to revisit this RGB color format again at that point. But with the R6, it just hasn't been possible. But hopefully, at least with the R7 1800X, we can bump this up to faster and not be hitting 100% CPU utilization. So it'll be interesting to see. I may revisit this video with the 1800X just to see, let you guys know what my findings were. But you can see, if I hit play on the stream here, that it is much smoother than when I use the RGB color space. Much smoother. But oddly enough, I did not have as big an issue with Intel processors. So I'm not sure if that's an Intel thing. Maybe there's an optimization on Intel processors that lets that happen a little bit easier. I'm not really sure about that. I haven't done any research to find out. But in all other aspects, for the same price, I gotta say, those Ryzen processors from AMD, a lot more power per dollar than what you get on the Intel side. If you're just buying a gaming PC, I'd still recommend an Intel processor. But if you're building a streaming PC, definitely AMD seems to be the way to go right now. You can see with that new NV12 color space, it's a much smoother experience there. Let's see if we can see the difference between the light and the dark, though, once the stream catches up. Not really. It's pretty bright in here, so it might be my eyes, but I found that with the RGB, you can see a little more detail in the black than with the NV12, but I'm not really seeing it right here, right now. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope it helped everybody who's looking to either A, start a stream, B, learn how to use OBS a little bit better and learn how to test their OBS settings, and C, if you're looking to buy a new computer for streaming or for gaming, highly suggest On Air PC. I want to thank them a lot for sending me this streaming PC. It's been a pleasure to use. I can't wait to use it some more. Thank you to On Air PC. Again, it's a really cool thing. They build custom PCs for gamers and for streamers. So if you just want a streaming PC, you don't want to pay for a bunch of extra stuff you're not going to use because this is a secondary PC. It's not going to be used for gaming. It's actually a hard thing to find if you're building or if you're buying something off the shelf. So you can call Ryan up at On Air PC. He does a great job working through the specs of a system and getting you exactly what you need. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Hit that like button if you liked the video. Hit subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time.